We are with Jenn McDonald and Mike Lemieux, and they are the owners of Mayflower Mercantile.
Yes.
Here in Plympton, and also they have a TV show on HGTV called Houses with History.
That's correct.
So I would like to know how this whole thing started. Let's start with the store. How long have you had the store?
Sure. Yeah, so the store has been open for just over 4 years.
We just had the 4-year anniversary
Yeah.
celebration a few months back.
Yeah,
Oh.
so this started as a restoration. This house is 1827. It's a Perkins house, and we really loved the property and wanted to save it. So in doing that, we wanted to also see if there was some other interesting ways to use the property, and so we started this store. So this used to be the chicken barn to the house, and actually there's been a few antique stores here over the years. There was a family.
It was the 1812 antique shop.
The
Was that
antique
what it
12,
was?
That's
yeah,
right.
I think
yeah,
so.
we've gotten a couple little postcards
Yeah.
from some Plympton, former Plympton residents have given us some information on that. So, there was a family, I think in the 50s, that ran an antique shop in the barn back here, which is also the original
Stockbridge family, I think, right?
Stockbridges,
Yes.
that's
Yep.
right. Thank you.
Yep.
And so their mother ran an antique shop here way back when, in the barn and in the chicken barn here. And the barn out there is the original 1827 barn that we restored, and we restored the whole house. We have the space and we weren't sure what to do with it. And so we wanted to start a local shop. So this is basically local artisans in here. Everything is made locally. There is nothing made overseas in the store. A lot of it's made in Plympton. We've got Hippie Pilgrim that makes the wonderful garlic salts. We have Jam with Love that makes jam in town, and lots of other interesting artisans. And then Mike and I are antique addicts in doing all our restoration work with Full Circle Homes. So we run a business. We have 12 employees that do restoration, remodel, and construction. I'm the interior designer, and Mike's the general contractor.
Okay.
And so we pick up a lot of antiques along the way, and we sell our antiques in here too. So it's a fun store. It's open on the weekends. It's in the center of town, and we really love our community. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I thought it was all antiques. I didn't realize you had local artisans, which is wonderful.
Oh yeah.
Well, it was kind of interesting. We took a little bit of a twist on it, and it really became the thought process of reinvoking the historic general store. And and I've said to Jenny for years, we've evolved into such a digital society that people 9 times out of 10 are just have their faces in their phones, right?
Yeah.
Which is great. I mean, it's like this. It's a great way for people to get to see what's out there, right?
That's true.
But then we wanted a place where people could actually come, and that was more tactile and see your neighbor or talk to your neighbor or discover Hippie Pilgrim and say, oh, this woman Susanna has a business that's right in town. So it was that way to really try to connect the whole community around something that has existed for hundreds of years.
Yeah, and there's so many, handmade items in here. We have like Dean, the blacksmith, makes all of the nails and hangers and things. He's amazing. There's so many different local artisans, and so we have a festival once a year on our old 300-year-old hayfields on Crescent Street in town, and we do a huge, I say huge, but it's like 75 vendors, and then we have music and demos. Dean, the blacksmith's there. We have our stained glass Jane that comes and does a demo. We have glass blowing and welding and all kinds of food. And so that's called Mayflower Market Days.
And that's coming up in October. So we do that in the fall.
Okay.
And I think we had close to 3,000 people last year.
75 vendors, a lot of antique vendors. So it's like a little mini Brimfield in Plympton.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
This year it's October 18th and 19th. So it's mid-October every year. We've been doing that for 4 years now. So
Okay, so now before you opened the store 4 years ago, did you live here?
Yes, we live in town.
Oh, you don't live in this house?
No,
We don't live in this
yeah,
house. No,
no.
our
Oh,
building,
okay.
No.
we live in town. No,
Okay.
we've restored at least a dozen homes in town. And we do work for clients, and then some we keep for rentals or whatever, or for ourselves. But we have a long-term rental across the street here. It's a Green Victorian. We just restored that last summer. We have our office for Full Circle Homes is right in this building.
Okay.
But we lived in town. We've been in town a decade now.
Okay.
Yep.
Full Circle
Yep.
Homes is your contracting business?
Yeah. Well, we
Yes.
have, so Full Circle Homes is our company. Full Circle Construction's our contracting business.
Okay.
So we've got a few different divisions underneath that.
Right.
And in part of Full Circle Homes, we do full design and construction. So when we identify a property like this where our office is, if it's a client house, right, we take them through the design process, which Jenn handles with our design staff. And it becomes this full life cycle of figuring out what the property is, who they are, what they want, how to restore it, and then a lot of times they end up becoming a construction client as well. And that really evolved
Okay.
out of Jenn and I doing our own projects, which is very much like where the store is at 4 Mayflower Road. And,
Right.
you know, we had already moved to town, and this house had been left derelict and was abandoned, and it took several years before we were
Oh,
even able
yeah.
to buy it.
Yeah, it was very
And
difficult to buy.
it was in such bad shape at first, we weren't even interested in it. I mean, and I have a real high tolerance. Jenn was like, no way. And I said the same thing. There was 2 feet of water in the basement when we started, and then part of what made this property attractive is the fact that we could have a little store here, and it did have commercial zoning, and we said, oh, wait a minute, what can we do with this? And we decided, you know, since we had been doing our own renovations, which started back in 2012, 13 area, right?
Okay.
Why don't we make a little office for our operations here, and then we could do the store, and then we could rent the property as well. So we made it kind of this nice mixed-use property that would help revitalize the center of town here.
Right.
And we just put a ton of work into it, and it's still it's ongoing. You know, we just redid
phases.
exactly. We just redid the barn out back, and we opened that up, and we have another little outbuilding, and we're about to finish that up. And so it's been this whole evolution. But we never lived in this house, but we just identified it and said, what could we do with it if we're lucky enough to own it?
Excellent. Okay, so it sounds like even your construction company came after you were already doing projects on your own.
That's right.
So how long, when did you actually start getting interested in this kind of a business?
Yeah, I mean, I think almost as soon as Jenn and I started dating, like one of the first things that we did together was just go out and look at houses. And we connected, or kind of reconnected in large part over this particular old house
Right.
that she was looking at when she lived in Kingston, which is a neighboring town here. And it was funny, she said, you know, I was gonna go and think about buying that and restoring it, but the person I was with at the time thought I was kind of ridiculous. And I said,
Not the right person.
Right.
Well, and I said, funny
Lucky for you.
right. Well, I know. Well, seriously, I said, funny enough, I was standing in that same driveway when that house was for sale, looking at that house, thinking
It's like
about
very-
buying it.
Wow, talk about synchronicity.
Right.
Synchronicity.
Yeah, for sure.
So you've been married how long?
We're 13 years.
I don't know. I think it's 14, but that's okay.
We're getting close.
That's usually the guys thing. You're giving us a bad reputation, Jen.
We don't really keep track, but it's you know, we're always so busy, and it just with everything that we have going on, so it's a little hard to keep track. But we basically build our whole lives around antique homes and antiques and Plympton. We've like I said, we've had so many different adventures in town with different dilapidated houses that have just been sitting there for years and years. When we
Right.
first moved into town, there were many more houses with tarps on their roofs, and we're always like, "What's going on with that house?" So,
Right.
yeah, so we've loved Plympton, and I think we've done at least a dozen houses in town.
Wow.
So
Yeah, between client homes and the ones that we've done
in the
ourselves,
decade
for
we've
sure.
lived here, yeah.
That's awesome. Where did you meet?
We went to high school, or we went to elementary school together in
Yeah.
Sandwich. So we're from Sandwich
Oh.
originally. I was best friends with his sister. His sister and I in high school were best friends, and then we were reconnected. We were at like a cookout at his
Yeah.
sister's
Yep.
years later.
Yeah, we hadn't seen
And
each other in like,
in like
20,
20 years.
20 some
Oh,
odd years.
wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, we
I
were
love
friends in
that.
high
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me how the TV show on HGTV came about. How
Sure.
did that happen? How did you
We
do
were we were actually in the midst of restoring this
This
house, or
house.
we'd just gotten it, right? And so it was in really bad shape.
Really, really bad.
And the network was casting for a show on the North Shore, and part of one of my dreams is I had always been an actor, and I always wanted to be on stage
a lot
and
of
everything.
plays
and
and-
yeah,
yeah.
and film and stuff like that. And you know, we had, you know, Jen's dream was always to have a little farm with animals and everything.
Which is
and,
perfect for Plympton.
Right. So
Yes,
and it worked out
yes.
good, and we just kind of said, well, let's go do your dream first, because you know that's attainable, right? There's like a pathway, and then we're, you know, every once in a while we'd see something like what they were casting for on the North Shore, and we're like, we should throw our hat in the ring and see. And so they came down here and started scouting our houses, and the gentleman that was scouting the houses, he walks through for Mayflower here, and he's like, wow, this is cool. It's like, I want to do this one. And then we showed him another one and another one.
Yeah.
And he's like, wow, you guys are really talented. You should have your own show. And then so we were just talking. We said, oh, well, what do you do? And he's like, well, I used to be in this band, and Jen and I, it's not hitting with us. And Rich, our carpenter, says it like almost instantaneously. He's like, "Oh, NKOTB," and we're like,
so
"Oh wait, John Knight?
John Knight
Yeah,
from New Kids
that's
on the Block
that John
was
Knight."
down.
Oh.
walking
Yeah.
through this house. Yeah.
Oh my
And it didn't even hit with us
Yeah.
like until he
Yeah.
said that. And
Oh my gosh.
so he got us connected with his production company,
Yeah.
and we started talking to them. And simultaneously, Jen had been, through her social media feed, had been contacted by, you know, 3 or 4 other production companies.
Yeah, they were just looking for old. It seemed like the networks, Magnolia, just started, and HGTV were both looking for antique home restoration, something different. So there was a lot of production companies like reaching out. That's usually
Right,
how it works.
exactly.
Is they reach
Ah,
out
okay.
once HGTV puts out the feelers and says, you know, we want this sort of show. They all start like looking around, and that's how they find you.
Okay.
Social media or magazine articles or wherever,
Right.
which we had, you know, some notice because we had done a house in town on Ring Road, which we still own and we rent as a short-term rental. It's called the Black Walnut House.
we heard about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Heard
that
about that.
house
That's right
gets
down
a
the street
lot
from here.
of interest. It's just designed a little differently, and it used to be a barn, and so it is just a, you know, the style in there is pretty dramatic with the, you know, vaulted it's similar to this, the vaulted ceilings and all that. So that had gotten some notice. So I owe a lot of credit, I think, to the house. The house
yeah.
really, you know, that's the one that kind of put us on the map, because we were in some magazine articles and things like that too. And so that's kind of how it developed from there.
Yeah, and then
Wow.
we
Yeah.
you know, in talking to different production companies, we ended up going with High Noon.
Yeah.
The first time we saw the show is the first time everybody saw it. So it was we had no idea what it was going to look like, and
Yeah.
we just kind of went along for the ride, and there you go.
Unlike us, we're
Yeah.
host producers, editors,
Oh, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
everything, cameramen.
Well, it's funny. That's kind of what we're doing now,
Yeah,
in
so
large
we
part.
just launched our YouTube
Yep.
channel.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
And,
so it's Full Circle Homes, Mike and Jenny.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
we like that because we, like you said, have a little more control over what we can show and not,
Yeah.
you know, and slow it down a little bit and go through the details of restoration. 'Cause
Right.
there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot that you can't show
Yeah.
in the 43 minutes that you get
Yeah,
for a
tell me
network
about it,
television show.
Right.
So it makes it more fun, but you know,
Yeah.
it's similar to what you ladies are doing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When we filmed the show, the production company and you know the sound people, the director of photography, were all really kind of amazed because they said to us, "Wow, you guys actually really do the work. Some of the shows don't, right? And that's fine. The schedules are tough. It's really
Yeah.
difficult to do it.
Yeah.
But many people oftentimes don't realize that we actually do the work. So we always tell people, you know, we are a licensed contractor.
Right.
We're a design firm. What you have seen us do on the show or you see in any of our properties, we can do for you in your house. So we actually do the work. We do a lot of client jobs every year. We do restore old homes. We help teach people how to do that. We help advise people when they're thinking of buying one. So anything that we can do to help that message of preserving history, the communities, and preserving old homes, you know, is what we're all about. So we always encourage people, always reach out, always ask a question. We do a whole series of little pop-up events at our store. So there's a full calendar on our website. So it's always worth checking out.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody makes a product, we're always looking at saying, oh, does somebody have a new product that maybe we could feature?
Yeah.
So we're always willing to consider things. We just like to make it a big community.
Yes.
And that's really what it's all about for us.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And what is your domain name for your website?
So it's fullcirclehomes.com or mayflowermercantile.com. You can find us on either one. That store is Mayflower Mercantile, and it goes to our Full Circle Homes site.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what, looking to the future, do you have any other changes, big plans?
Well, we're in the midst of having just launched the YouTube channel. We've got some really exciting projects that we're in the midst of filming and doing that we're going to be showing a lot of the coverage of. One is a $1 schoolhouse that we bought in Middleborough. That was in such bad shape that I'm not sure $1 wasn't too expensive. And then we just moved a 1730s cape down the road in Plympton. We picked it up, put it on a trailer, and moved that.
Yeah, went from Crescent Street to Main Street.
Yep.
So it's now on Main Street. It's sitting there waiting for its foundation.
Yeah, exactly.
my
And we got a lot of footage on that, and we're about to make a foundation and actually put the house in its new home, and then there'll be a full restoration on that as well. So we've got a bunch of exciting projects like that coming up.
Yeah.
And we're going to be sharing that with everybody that's interested in watching.
And like
Wonderful.
Mike said, there's always events going on in the store. We have tons of different pop-ups and things like that. We do like a seed swap in the spring with the local Plympton Garden Club and all kinds of events. So there's always something going on in here on the weekends.
That is wonderful.
Yeah.
Is there a typical amount of time that it takes to restore a home?
Well, it's interesting. That's a question that we get a lot. It all depends on the condition of the house.
I'm sure, yeah.
But some of the houses that Jen and I are used to taking on, like this one that we're standing in,
This was bad.
this was almost the
Really
equivalent of doing 3 antique houses at once
Yeah.
because of just the size of it.
Yeah.
But we did this in about 8 months. The trick is, and this is what we try to tell all of our clients, you know, if somebody buys an antique house, I wouldn't be afraid of doing it, but live in it, take some time to decide what you want to do with it.
Right.
Sit down with us, go over the designs, come up with a plan, and expect that if you do that, you know, you're going to have probably at least a year into it by the time you've designed it all, sourced your materials, and figured out what you want to reconstruct it as.
Right.
You know, it's always good to have at least a year to play with. Some smaller projects might be 4 to 6 months, but
Yeah.
a year is kind of a standard timeline to think about for a house that doesn't have, you know, FEMA restrictions or some other type of environmental restrictions, or you don't need to lift it and put a foundation under. There's all kinds of variables, but, you know, just the more flexible you are, the easier it is.
Okay. Were you able to keep the main structure of
Yes.
this building?
Yes, we were.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the whole thing. I
Yeah.
mean, the only parts that were really, really bad were the newer parts, actually. So the little attachment in between
Right.
the colonial in the front and the barn here, that spot was not flashed right and probably added in the 50s or 60s. And so we had to rebuild all of that,
Yeah.
which started to melt kind of a corner of the house.
Right.
But that was the most rotted section, actually. It
Yeah.
was the old stuff that was in great shape. There was holes in the roof and it was raining through 2 floors. But
Well, this
but
one.
other than that, it was in really good shape. Like the bones of the house were really, really solid.
I don't know if you remember, Jen, but we had said once the water had subsided in the
Oh,
basement,
yeah.
we were able to walk through it
Yeah.
and get to see the framing. The house was extremely solid.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And
so,
that's the benefit of a lot of these old homes. We
Yeah.
always say is, don't rip them apart. Don't rip the windows out.
don't take the horsehair plaster
Like,
out.
don't take any of that out.
Yeah.
Assess it first. You can't get the materials like you do in a structure like this.
No.
And, you know, another
We restored
woman,
every single window.
we
It's
did.
all original in the front of the house.
But an important
Yeah.
point that somebody brought up to us the other day that we don't always think of, you know, we don't want to make trash. We don't want to fill a dumpster, but the amount of carbon that's stored in old growth wood, when you throw it away, you're throwing that much exponentially, you're releasing that much more carbon into the atmosphere as well. Because younger materials don't have the time to grow long enough to become such a carbon sink.
Okay.
So you're doing a lot of good for the environment. You're doing a lot of good for the house itself. You're doing great for the fabric of the community just to preserve a home like this.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Wonderful information. I love your business. I love this store. And thank you very much for meeting with us today. This is great.
We're so psyched you guys were able to
yeah,
come.
thanks for
Yeah.
coming and visiting our little town.
Yeah.
Our pleasure.
So these little, and it makes a perfect slat wall. So it's a big, long piece that the cranberries would rolled out on.
Yeah.
This is all sheathing from the barn that was here, right?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
We found these shutters in a house over in Pembroke. Jen had got in contact with a woman. She sent us pictures, and we're like, oh my god. And then the metal top, which I call the sorry top.
Oh, I got that
came
earlier,
off
but I'll get it again.
Yeah, off of a building in New Hampshire. And we had to come up with a creative way to make a door for the basement, basically. So this is what it is. So you slide the trunk out, the door opens up, you can go to the basement.